EAGLES, Eagles.
Eagles fans, welcome back to another edition, a Saturday edition at that, of Football 24/7. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and I'm joined by John McMullen, our Philadelphia Eagles insider here at JAKIB Sports. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. More content is always on the way for you guys, especially that pre, post, and halftime show that we're going to give you guys tomorrow. Because your Philadelphia Eagles are facing off with their NFC East rival, the Washington Commanders. Now, there's a pecking order when it comes to the rivalries, right? You know, our true rival, I know a lot of people would like it to be the Dallas Cowboys, but our true rival would be the New York Giants. But there's a pecking order in terms of hate in Philadelphia, John, and I'm pretty sure you know that, right? Of course, the Dallas Cowboys are the pinnacle of Philadelphia Eagles hate. They're the bane of our existence. Then you have the Giants, and then you have the Commanders. So this is going to be a competitive game because it is the NFC East. That's pretty much how this thing goes over here. But John, before we get too deep into the content, how are you feeling on this Saturday afternoon?
Feeling good. Yeah. I think that NFC East thing has to do with when you grew up, basically. You know, if
expand it a little bit, because I was born in '94.
Yeah, so for older people, when the Cowboys were really good, the Tom Landry years, Roger Staubach, I mean, the Eagles were just beaten like a drum. So that's where that sort of hate begot itself. And then I think you have a number of younger people that in the area who took to the Cowboys for whatever reason, America's team and all that. So, yeah, that fuels some of it. And then the Giants and the Commanders, who are on their third team name, you know, if you grew up when Joe Gibbs was, you hated the then Redskins, now Commanders, and similar to the Giants with Bill Parcells, and when they were winning Super Bowls with Tom Coughlin, there was some hate for the Giants because they were so successful. Now, you know, the Eagles pretty much dominate everybody but the Cowboys, so there's not much to hate, really, if you think about it that way.
Yeah, that Cowboys domination. The reality is, in the Dak Prescott era, the Philadelphia Eagles, well, Dak Prescott is 8-3 against the Philadelphia Eagles. That's just the reality. Unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys, they may struggle against everybody else, but for some reason, Dak Prescott knows how to wake up against the Philadelphia
Eagles. They don't
Eagles.
struggle against that. They won a lot of games in recent years. They just failed usually when they're supposed to win in the playoffs. But they're a good team. They're a good team. If you're being real, they're a good team.
Yeah. The Cowboys have always been a good team. You know, that's one thing I won't be blind to. The Cowboys have always been a good team. The Commanders, on the other hand, they've had their ups and downs, right? But I want to get into some things with this Eagles offense versus this Commanders defense. You know, one thing that stands out to me when it comes to the Commanders defense is their inability to stop the run. Granted, small sample size, but so far they haven't really been the best team in terms of stopping the run. On top of that, they're giving up about 6.5 yards per attempt from quarterbacks. So stats aren't everything. You know, we talked about that yesterday, John. Stats aren't everything, especially at this part of the season. But I do think there's something to be said about a team who's struggling to stop the run, especially if they're facing the Philadelphia Eagles. So based on everything you know about the Commanders right now, just from the eye test, how can the Philadelphia Eagles, by your estimation, take advantage of this Commanders defense?
Well, I think it always starts with Washington, how you handle their front. I mean, that's the strength of their team. This is, probably the best defensive front that the Eagles will see all season. You could argue maybe Dallas as well, but because of Micah Parsons. But if you talk about up and down the defensive line, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Now Chase Young is healthy and playing like he was supposed to play when he was the number 2 overall pick. They have 4 first-round picks, and they're all really, really good. So, first and foremost, you got to handle that group up front. And if you can do that, and the Eagles are better equipped probably to do that than most because they have arguably the best offensive line. So it becomes strength versus strength. And then similar to the Eagles, because their defense is built the same way, they're very strong up front, and maybe they have some weaknesses in the back seven. That's the same thing with Washington. Um, if you can hold up and pass protection, you can make some things happen with inside the back seven of Washington, which is, you mentioned everything's skewed because of how poorly they played against Buffalo statistically. So we talked about that yesterday. I'm not really focused in that aspect of it. But on paper, they're pretty good. I would say the one obvious weakness is linebacker Cody Barton's playing really, really poorly. And he's sort of one of their two main linebackers, and he actually plays more than Jamin Davis, who's a former first-round pick, has played pretty well. But Barton's supposed to be the guy in the middle, and he's not doing well when it comes to run defense, and that kind of explains some of the issues they've been having.
Yeah, the thing is, the Commanders, they've always been a talented team, in my opinion, over the past few years, especially on defense. I feel like I think you would agree, their defense has always overshadowed their offense, right? Especially when you got all those first rounders on that team: Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, Allen, Young, like you said, Jamin Davis, former first rounder. Now they have Emmanuel Forbes Jr. On that side of the ball, their first round pick at corner. Emmanuel Forbes, I think on draft night, he spoke about how he's looking forward to facing off with Devontae Smith. Last time he saw that man, Devontae had one of the best games of his life. I think he had 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards receiving, something like that. So, that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. Are there any matchups that you're going to be paying attention to, be it from the offensive line, be it from the trenches, be it from
I want to see how Cam Jurgens holds up in this game. I think this is the first big test because you have Allen and Payne right in the middle, and they're legit good players. It's not about being a first-round pick. I mean, they've been first-round picks who delivered, and they're high-level players. Allen obviously has been a Pro Bowl player multiple times. Deron Payne is more the run stuffer type. So, not as many accolades, but he's really good. And, Cam Jurgens, I think, is fit in seamlessly, but this will be the big test, especially against those two guys. And you got to bring your A game because they're going to be tough to deal with.
What's something a Jonathan Allen and a Deron Payne would be able to do to take advantage of an inexperienced guy like Cam Jurgens?
I mean, you see it every week with the Eagles. I mean, they're just really gifted. We talk about all the hurries Jalen Carter has had. I think he's got 15, while Allen's got 13. He's really good. And Deron Payne, you talk about Jordan Davis and what he's been able to do for the Eagles. It's the type of player he is. Not quite as big, obviously, but very physical, very tough to move inside. A lot of stops, which means, positive plays for the defense. They're just really, really gifted. And I would argue, then you talk about the edge. Montez Sweat has actually turned out to be better than Chase Young. A lot of injury issues with Chase Young, but Montez Sweat, he might be the most underrated edge player in this league. He's got 13 pressures. He's got 7 hurries, 4 sacks already.
Wow.
And Chase Young, as we mentioned, is finally healthy and playing like that number 2 overall pick. He's got 7 pressures. He's got 2 sacks. They're just really, really gifted. In fact, if you want to take the top 4 Eagles defensive linemen, whether you want to say it's obviously Reddick, Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, or Jordan Davis, depending which way you want to go. This group is more gifted, if that's possible.
Interesting. That's interesting. Because Montez sort of as a player, he's battled some off the field things early on in his career. He seemed to get everything back on track. Chase Young with the injuries, right? But then the good thing is, like you always say, Chase Young and those boys, they're not going up against the Eagles defensive line. They're going up against the Eagles offensive line.
Yeah.
And that's where the rubber is going to have to meet the road. I'm curious to see how Mailata holds up against a guy like Chase Young. The last time Chase Young played us, I think he had 2 sacks in the game, but that was in 2020 when he was healthy. So when you think about this Eagles offensive line, what do you think is being said to them by a guy like Jeff Stoutland? I know you mentioned how talented this Commanders defensive line is, but what do you think is the mantra that Jeff Stoutland is preaching going into this game?
Well, they know. I mean, they play Washington twice a year. Kelsey and Lane and everybody but Cam Jurgens knows at this point how gifted Washington is up front. So it's no surprise. They've been this way for a while. It's been the strength of their team. And they've had plenty of issues everywhere else, basically. So it's nothing you have to say. And the Eagles, they take it as a badge of honor to sort of dominate, very similar to last week when we talked about Tampa Bay's ability to stop the run since Todd Bowles has been there, and the Eagles go out and run for over 200. They take pride in that. And they know this, and they've said it basically. Jason said it numerous times. Lane said it. This is the most gifted front they're going to see all year, and they know it, and that's a big test for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about this Eagles pass game, right? We talked about the Eagles run game and how the offensive line can potentially push things, but still they're going to get some talented guys. Obviously, the running back situation is interesting, but I think people's main concern with the Philadelphia Eagles right now is the passing game. It hasn't looked as fluid as we would like. I think they're starting to turn a corner a little bit. We saw some positive things in the second half of that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. I think they started to really accept what the Buccaneers were allowing, and that's the fact they were allowing things underneath. And you saw Hurts beginning to hit AJ Brown underneath on those curl routes or those out routes, things like that. And AJ Brown was able to make something happen with the ball. I'm curious, when it comes to defending the pass for the Commanders and the Eagles passing game, what can the Philadelphia Eagles do this week to get that passing attack back on track? What can they do to take advantage of this somewhat limited pass defense that the Commanders have? Again, they're giving up about 6.5 yards per attempt. Also, only a 3-game sample size. Can't really lean too heavily on that stat. But again, the Eagles pass offense, they kind of took it to them in the first matchup in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, Devontae had a big game down there.
Right.
Probably his best game as a pro. So, yeah, I mean, they're not, Kendall Fuller's having a great year by all indications. And he's solid. Benjamin St. Juste is their other outside corner. He's really long, really physical, but he's susceptible to getting some PIs. So, maybe you have to keep an eye on how the officials are calling the game, and maybe you can take advantage of that. And then you mentioned Emmanuel Forbes. He's not playing well, so he could, but he hasn't played well to this point. Very young player.
As of right now, they have St. Juste in the nickel and Forbes on the right side.
Well, St. Juste is playing more, so
okay.
Fuller and St. Juste are the guys who are on the field the most.
Okay.
And then I'll look it up real quick. So Fuller Fuller and St. Just are 121 snaps. Forbes is 75. So
Interesting. Okay.
those are the guys. Fuller's having a really good year. Again, early, but having a very good year. St.
Right.
Just has been solid as well, but again, he's susceptible, a little bit too physical at times. And Forbes has really struggled. Fuller, if you look at Fuller, he's given up 5 receptions and 12 targets, and a 14.6 passer rating. That's how well he's playing. So he's been playing again. These are very small sample size.
Right.
Now, St. Just has given up a much higher completion percentage, 11 of 13, but only for 107 yards. So he's not giving up a ton of yardage. Passer ratings 101. And then Forbes is 9 of 12 for 159. So he's getting gashed, almost 18 yards a catch. So I would say that's the guy you want to target if you're the Eagles.
Let's state it for a second, really quickly. Let's state it for a second, John. So how would you align these matchups, right? If you're Nick Sirianni or Brian Johnson and you want to maximize your roster, your personnel to the best of their ability, what do you think the Eagles are hoping for in terms of matchups, right? Do they want Brown facing off with St. Just? Do they want Smith on four? Do they want Smith facing off with Forbes? Do they want Zacchaeus facing off with Fuller? What do you think is the perfect scenario for the Philadelphia Eagles to take?
Well, I think the perfect scenario would to get Devontae on Forbes, because I don't think they're going to, I think because of St. Just's size, I mean, I don't know what Jack's going to do, Jack Del Rio, but I would assume he would want that on A.J. Brown as much as he can. Not going to say he's going to travel. But I think, if you can get a Devontae Smith on Emmanuel Forbes, there's going to be a chance to make some big plays there. And that's what I would try to manipulate. It's interesting. Devontae made that great catch, if everybody remembers it, at FedEx Field before halftime last year. And that was against Fuller, I believe. And Fuller, as I said, he's been great. So, the Eagles receivers can make plays on anybody. But, Forbes is struggling so much, I would try to, he's probably having a crisis of confidence, all that type of thing. I would try to take advantage. That'd be the matchup I'd try to take advantage of.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you think there's some, because as technical as football is, right? There's a large mental component, and with Forbes kind of setting the table for him facing off with Devontae Smith, with him mentioning the fact that he's looking forward to that matchup. That's kind of like some level of bulletin board material. Granted, he said it a long time ago, but the bottom line is that's something he said, and I'm sure Devontae Smith, when he sees him, he's going to want to take advantage of a guy that thinks he can potentially match up. And like you said, Forbes isn't really having the best season thus far. Do you think there's a mental aspect there that Devontae can potentially take advantage of? Devontae is one of the best right now, and there's a mystique that comes with that.
Yeah, Devontae's got that Alabama thing going. So I don't think he's too worried about, and he's got tremendous confidence in himself. So I don't think he's too worried about the rat poison, as Nick Saban. He teaches those guys pretty well. And I think Nick deserves it, because every time an Alabama guy comes in here, they just seem very, very focused, very Jalen Hurts-like. Devontae's like that as well. So I don't think he's going to, tap back into his Crimson Tide days. I mean, he had a big game against Washington last season, as with probably his best game. And the Eagles want to get the passing game going. So they want to get it going. They might say they don't, but they do. And I think they know ultimately it might not be the next couple weeks, because the Jets have Zach Wilson and not Aaron Rodgers, and the Rams aren't that good, and Washington is okay, but they have a young quarterback. It might not be until Miami, and then Dallas and Kansas City and Buffalo and San Francisco and Dallas again and Seattle. That sort of run they have on this schedule, they got to get the passing game going. And they're not going to be able to win those games without getting the passing game going. So they want to get it going no matter what they say. And this is a good week to do it because, and everybody's been focused on this, and Nick has, and Dallas Goedert and Brian Johnson. They faced guys who are trying to stop the passing game. It shifted. People, and I just wrote about this on Sports Illustrated, people kind of forget because things have advanced so quickly. Coming off the 2021 season, 2021, when the Eagles lost in the playoffs to Tampa Bay and Todd Bowles completely shut down Jalen Hurts, everybody came into the 22 season early saying, we're going to make Jalen Hurts beat us throwing the football, or trying to do that. And it was week 2 against Minnesota. They just played that soft zone and said, all right, throw from the pocket and beat us. And he was, 26 of 31 for 330 yards. And it was sort of like the coming out party that, all right, this guy's improved. And he spent his offseason working on his weaknesses. Now they've come into 2023, and those first 3 guys, Belichick, Flores, Bowles, they said, we're going to do everything to mitigate Jalen Hurts, and somebody else is going to have to beat us. And by and large, they accomplished their goal, but somebody else beat them. And, the past 2 weeks, it was DeAndre Swift in the running game. But, they can't beat the Miami Dolphins playing like that. They
Agreed.
can't beat a good, if Dallas brings their A game, they can't beat Dallas playing like that. They can't beat Kansas City playing like that. They got to get this passing game going. Buffalo as well. And
49ers as well too. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a good week because the Eagles expect more of a traditional defensive plan from Washington. And, last year was, I think, 8 for 169 or something like that for DeMonte. That'd be nice to see again Sunday.
A couple more things I want to hit before we get out of here, John. We're entering 24 minutes live on air. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are also subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Continue to stay locked in on Football 24/7 with John McMullen and myself, Tone DeShields II. You mentioned Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, those guys, and just the likelihood of the Eagles seeing something a little bit more traditional is higher. Brian Johnson, once again, is going to face off with 2 experienced guys on the defense side of the ball. You've watched Jalen Hurts in his offense for the past 3 weeks. What do you want to see from a play calling perspective? Like, what do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of in your own personal opinion? Again, you've seen this offense for the past 3 weeks, and you've been able to, judge them slowly but surely. What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? What do you want to see in general?
Well, it depends. I mean, everything's
From the
reactive.
from the passing game.
I think if for some reason Washington shows up and plays, 8 men coverage, yeah, I want them to run the football. I don't want them to try to pound the square peg in a round hole, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to play Washington Commanders football, and that's rely on their front 4, and that's going to give the Eagles some opportunities to get the passing game going. And, whether it's, if you can match up with A.J. Brown, I want to take advantage of Forbes. That's what I want to do. If I'm the Eagles, I'm focused on that. And that's a big weakness for Washington right now. The Eagles need to get that passing game going. And if they don't, and we don't see, these umbrella zone coverages, that's a bad sign. We're going to start talking about that next week. If Washington plays the way I expect Washington to play and they stop the Eagles passing game, it might be time to sound the alarm bell a little bit.
Interesting. Now, sound the alarm bell on the coaching staff, the quarterback, everyone? How are you know who's getting most of your vitriol if that's the case?
Well, it's always the players. I mean, always. I mean, there's no reason if you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts, you shouldn't be able to throw the
You should be able to
football.
do something, right?
Yeah. So, people can blame, and that's part of it. And coaches understand that, and quarterbacks understand it as well. It's Nick and Jalen. They're going to take the brunt of the criticism. And that's just the way it is. But it's always talent before coaching. Always. I mean,
Okay.
as good as any coach can be, if you don't have talent, you can't win consistently in this league.
I would definitely agree with that. All right, John, before we close the show, I'm gonna get your opinion on some over-unders, and then I'm finally going to get a prediction from you, given that the game is tomorrow. Over-unders, and also live chat. I want you guys to chime in as well. I want to get your opinions on these over-unders as well. So, for Jalen Hurts, over-under 215.5 passing yards. Over or under?
Oh, it better be over. Ooh, it better be over. I'm going to go over. If it's not over, yeah, it's going to, it's not going to be good.
Okay. All right. Over under DeAndre Swift, 99.5 rushing yards.
I'm going to go under because I think the Eagles are going to throw it more.
Under? Okay.
Yeah. And I think they want to throw it more. I think they're going to throw it more. Not as many opportunities. Although, you get 150-yard run. Yeah, I like the number, but I'm just playing the odds here and going under.
Okay. A.J. Brown, over under 75.5 receiving yards.
I'm going over.
Okay.
I'm going over and should be well over for both receivers. I don't know where you're going with Devontae, but it should be over. I'm going over.
Okay. Devontae Smith, over under 70.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, over. I'm going over.
Okay. Dallas Goedert. I think this is the harder one. Dallas Goedert, over under 40.5 receiving yards.
Well, that's a low number, except if you've been watching them for the first 3 games.
That's what it's been.
Yeah, it's been less. Yeah, I'm going over. I'm going over on everybody.
Okay.
You might have a couple 100-yard games. You should get Dallas into the 60s at least.
Why do you think it's been so hard for Brian Johnson to get Dallas Goedert involved? And hear me out on this, right? I understand it begins with the talent, but I'm not a fan of the route concepts they're having Dallas Goedert run, at least when he's targeted. It seems like he's running a lot of stuff, a lot of routes to the flat, a lot of screens. I don't really see them trying to get him going downfield in the intermediate.
Well, I there has been a lot of umbrella coverage.
Okay.
So, when it was worse against, there's a lot everybody is trying to keep their eyes on Jalen Hurts. So nobody wants to turn their back on Jalen Hurts. Everybody's got their eyes on the quarterback. The goal is to keep everything in front. And, if you are going to get a splash play, and you saw it in week 2 with Devontae, it's going to be, it's not going to be a tight end. It's going to be somebody with some juice that can get by a corner. So part of it is just the way the opposition has been playing, and that's where they took advantage of the run game. But yeah, they should be able to get Dallas Goedert more involved. Sometimes I don't think Jalen is comfortable with those, throwing out dump ball passes. I talk about it all the time. I don't think it's his favorite thing to do. So maybe that affects it. Maybe maybe Brian's got to get away from that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if it keeps going like this, we got to start saying what's going on with the tight end, because I find it very hard to believe that at Dallas's age, he just woke up one day and
Forgot
no
how to pick a
longer
ball.
has it. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, but teams have been taking away the pass, and they've done a good job with it. And the Eagles have pivoted to the running game. But they got to get it going at some point. They have to. They're not going to win. They're not going to go where they want to go. And let's be honest, they want to go to the Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl or bust, unless the passing game starts clicking at some point.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that wholeheartedly. You guys heard it here first, man. Eagles, Commanders tomorrow. Oh, John, really quickly, what's your prediction for tomorrow's game?
At 27-21 Eagles, I think it'll be a little bit closer than people expect, but even, it might be a late score, backdoor cover, that type of thing. The Eagles,
Okay.
I expect to be in control of the game. Maybe you get a late garbage time score, something of that nature.
Yeah, so, okay, you say 27-21, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, I got the Eagles winning this game 34-21. This is going to be interesting. Again, like you said, the passing game, it's put up or shut up time. Otherwise, we're going to start to look at this quarterback. We're going to start to look at this coordinator. We're going to start to look at everybody and figure out what's going on, what's in the Gatorade, what's in the juice. So I'm looking forward to this matchup for sure. John, as always, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy weekend, man. Make sure you get plenty of rest. You're one of the hardest men. You're one of the hardest working men in show business. So I appreciate you doing your thing as always. Eagles fans, smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you guys also check out John McMullen on Birds 365 at 8 a.m. Eastern time with Jody Mack, and also check them out on jakibsports.com and si.com. Does amazing work for those guys as well. Sports Illustrated, of course. We appreciate you guys. This has been Football 24/7 with John McMullen, and I'm your guy, Tony DeShields II. We'll see you next time. And Fly Eagles Fly.